Hi, welcome to the 13th floor. I'm Marty Duda. Today we have with us, in celebration of the New Zealand International Film Festival, Ant Timpson. Welcome.
Hello, Marty. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming around so early in the morning and talking to me. It's great.
I've got kids. This is not early
Very good.
at all. Yeah.
See, I have kids, but they're older. So, like, I spent until about 11 o'clock last night in a bar with my oldest one. So it's a different.
I'm looking forward to the shift. Yeah.
Anyway, so congratulations. You have your first feature-length film being shown at the film festival, Come to Daddy. Are you excited?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the first screening on home soil, which is monumental for me. I've had films in the festival as a producer for a while now, but this is just completely, this is jumping to the other side of the fence, and so I'm kind of like nervous, but that really great kind of nervousness.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the film, and then we'll talk about what you do in the film festival. So the film itself, from my understanding, it was kind of inspired by your own father and the death of your father.
Yeah.
And you decided to...
Yeah, I mean, it's got very dark origins,
right.
Even though the film's got lots of sort of gallows humor throughout. Right. But yeah, it's a love letter to my dad, really. The type of films that we used to watch together when I was younger, these sort of, very character-driven British thrillers that were constantly surprising, but also welded that really high wire balancing act of like tone, where you have things like Charlie Varick, where you have like very suspenseful, dark thrillers that then quite broad comedy mixed in with it.
Right.
So that's the kind of, I mean, I love that type of cinema, and then it's sort of, that's been transformed over the years, and you get the sort of Fargo style film as well. So this is a love letter to my dad, but also to those types of films that I grew up watching, and in a contemporary veneer, with hopefully a few spins that people don't see coming. But yeah, so my dad died, and then it's like things that happened after his death were so sort of powerful and evocative to me. Obviously, it's death of a parent's major, but how it happened and then what happened afterwards were all part of the genesis of where the idea for the film came from. And then I worked with a UK writer, and we expanded it.
Right, and that UK writer is Toby Harvard?
Toby Harvard, yes.
Who you've kind of worked with before.
Yeah, so I've read a lot of Toby's scripts. He was the co-writer of a film I produced called The Greasy Strangler, with directed by Jim Hoskins, with Elijah Wood's company. And then so I've known Elijah Wood for a long time, and so he was the first person that I actually sent the script to, Come to Daddy, once we'd sort of were happy that, look, this is good enough. And Elijah was actually in mind for the character. We kind of sent the script and a photo image of Skrillex to him, and said, "What do you think? What do you think of this?" Right. And he just responded like massively and loved it, loved the idea. And he doesn't do a lot of parts these days, actually, because he's so busy with all his other stuff. So I was really just ecstatic that he agreed. Right.
And the reference to Skrillex is the fact that the lead character is a DJ of some description, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I had, like, the thing with Skrillex is that I'd known his music before I'd actually seen any interviews with the guy, and so I had an idea of what he was like. So he didn't actually, he wasn't what I wanted it to be when I heard these interviews. It was kind of like, he was just like, seemed very normal. And kind of,
don't you hate that?
Yeah, and I kind of wanted a guy that was a little bit more douchey, but Elijah wisely, like when we were talking about the character, said he's got to ground the entire film. So we didn't really want to alienate the audience, but we wanted that type of character who's like maybe on the LA scene, maybe big notes himself, very fashion conscious, has a really like striking monk style haircut. Right. And so Elijah was just totally game for all these sort of Skrillex. I mean, Skrillex in the terms of like, that's a character, when you see him. So we wanted someone who kind of looked like an alien in a foreign landscape when we first see him, out of his element, out of LA, out of comfortability. Yeah.
But the actual music that is composed for the film is by Carl Stevens.
Carl Stevens, who I know Carl Stevens. I've never actually worked with him, but I've known him for a long time. But this was an amazing experience actually to work with Cal, because Cal's like a brainiac, you know. He's he's not short of ideas. Let's just say that. Like Cal can just constantly keep creating, keep working throughout the entire process. But so we talked a lot about the composition for the film, which is a major part of it, and had to marry with the sound design. Probably more so than most films in a way, because it needed to really become one entity and tie in the location specifically without giving away too much. So I gave Cal like a Rolodex, because I'm terrible at speaking about music. All I can talk about is things I like or don't like. Right. So which he liked. He just said like just don't try and waffle and think that, you know, just say exactly what you feel. So I just gave him like these moments, and like I was like picking bits out of, you know, Lalo Schifrin and going, see how the structure goes, you know, the notes go down here. That like 1.5 seconds. I love that. And then he would take that and then go away with some old valves and like create it there. Right. And so it was just an organic process. And he did a huge bank that we could keep going back to, like a giant bank before we even got, while we're still, like he was onto it while we were shooting. So we started well in advance. I mean, way before that actually. So yeah, I had a playlist on Spotify that everyone sort of got their head around where this was all coming from. Right. And yeah, but Cal knocked it out of the park.
And does the film take place in the northwest of the U.S.? Yeah,
I mean, years ago I travelled through, I actually was helping out with we did a big outdoor Goonies screening in Astoria, where the Goonies was shot. Right. And I remember travelling along that coast, and then there was like a place called, I think it was called Crystal Cove, around there with big overhangs and really wild, windswept, huge logs on the beach and very isolated. And I was like, oh man, I'd love to shoot around here. It's a port town. We could all just have a camp hang there for a whole summer. It would be amazing. And then just the nature of co-productions and how they work. You've got to, these countries have to collaborate, and it's like, where does the spend go and everything. So we ended up shooting on Vancouver Island, and like a small surf town on the far coast, and that was very isolated, but captured the same spirit of what that whole Oregon area. Right. But yeah, so most people think it's shot in Oregon, or to be honest, most people think after they see the New Zealand Film Commission at the start of the film, they think it's shot in New Zealand. Yeah.
Does it have kind of a Twin Peaksy vibe to it?
I mean, every time you see like that type of music and those trees, it feels, But I mean, it's got a lot of, how can you not be influenced by David Lynch? Right. If you're a cinephile, like he's everywhere. But you don't want to be trying to mimic the guy. Like there's only one David.
This is true. Yes,
you just look like it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the style of the film is kind of builds up to certain surprises and whatever. As a director, how did this fit in with what you'd done previously? Was it something new for you, or is it kind of part of the same process?
I'd done I was like a home movie kid, and started off thinking that's what I was going to do, and got the arts grants, made a very artistic short that was on 35mm, played at the film festival here, and got applause from one person in the audience, another director, complete silence elsewhere. So I mean, my background that was all leading up to me being that filmmaker and going for it. But just the way life happens, I deviated and went into so many other areas of the film world, and started like working on other people, supporting other people's dreams to be filmmakers. And I probably should have had this giant bitter thing boiling away, but it was really I wrote a long piece for a magazine about how I went into a cocoon, and when I was trying to make one from the death of one parent, and then the death of the other parent was like a propulsion to actually finally get back to make it. Because you suddenly you hit 50 and you think, oh, I'm too old, I can't, how am I going to do it? But it's just, life surprises you, and everything fell into place, and it was right. And I always talk about films as alchemy, it's just things, they either explode and disappear, or something really beautiful comes out of it. So it just worked out. And as a director, I was completely jumping off a bungee with not knowing whether it was tied on or not. So that was just exhilarating. I felt like I got a electroshock start into my life again. I felt, it just felt amazing.
So were you in the audience when it was first screened in public?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we've done test screenings, so it's kind of seen a version in front of audiences, and it was like, this plays well. And everyone had been saying it's really good, but you lose perspective, So. But New York was really the first big public screening, and I mean, for me, like, De Niro's festival, kind of cool as a cinephile to walk around. There's like the Taxi Driver locations, and now I'm going to go see our film with the New York audience. So it was amazing. But I've travelled now, just in the last few weeks, all over the place to places like Seoul, and watched it with foreign audiences, and Switzerland, and we had a massive reception in Montreal and Canada. Like, they went berserk for it, but that's that crazy genre bubble, So I'm really curious about this one, because this is kind of more aiming at the mainstream crowd. It's very much a prime session at the Civic. There won't just be genre fans there. There'll be friends, obviously, hopefully a few, but it'll be really intriguing to see how it plays to a very broad mainstream crowd.
And I assume as a director, you're kind of watching the audience to see how they react at certain points in the film.
Well, you hopefully have done that in your testing process.
But especially, like you say, with an audience that's not possibly targeted.
And I have, my expectations are pretty, coming from the producer side and the business side, and knowing that side of the business really well. I've got a pretty good idea of where it sits in the market, and not to be, and keep everything in check, really. I'm not... to me, I've had a dream run so far. So if the film melted in the projector and that was the end of it tonight, I'd be so happy with what's happened up till this point. I wish it was melting in the projector, because then it would be film, and that was the whole. Originally, the plan was to shoot on film, but I feel really lucky and privileged to have made a film first off, and then to work with so many cool people, and to actually come out with something that people like.
Yeah. Now, in talking about the film festival, and you've been associated with the film festival for years, and you started the Incredibly Strange Film Festival. So maybe, and the film festival seems to be going through some changes. Bill Gosden has retired a few months ago. So what is your status with the film festival? What can you tell people that you're part of?
I mean, I actually saw Bill just recently in Sydney at the Sydney Film Festival, and he was looking great, which I was really surprised, because he's obviously not great. But we talked a lot about that, and it's such a huge. It's like, for him, it's like a half his body, really. It's like the festival's a major part of his life, and I think it's going to be really tricky to watch if he checks in on it from afar, watching someone else take over. So I was just trying to tell him to like blanket and walk away, and look at other things now, and because you don't want to be looking back, I don't think so. For me, as I would program till I keel over, but in some ways, a new director comes in, it could be exciting for him to clear the decks of everybody, right across the board, and start. But I don't know if he's got that ability, because there's a board and everything. But it's kind of, I'd be absolutely happy if he flushed the decks, brought in new blood, and saw how it went. I think the festival could do whether the programmers change or get tweaked. I feel like there's a lot that can be done for the festival, just to sort of signal that it's a new start, it's a new beginning, which will happen with a new director anyway. So it's exciting times to see.
So it's kind of a period of transition. This is kind of
and I think we've been really lucky under Bill. I mean, he just had great taste, and it's like, the festival is very pure. You go to these other festivals, you're just bombarded with sponsors ads, and they're just it's very different. The markets are attached with them, and it's a very different experience. Here it's just like literally you turn up, you sit down, and you watch multiple movies every day. And we're lucky too that we don't have crazy queuing systems and everything.
No, it's going nice and smoothly. So what films can you recommend? What are your favorites that are on?
Well, I want to see Bacurau, which the Brazilian Western, which which everyone says is just a knockout big screen experience. So I've seen a lot. just through screeners and everything. But there's certain films that I really want to see, and that's one of them. The Lodger, you know.
Oh yes, I'm going to go see that.
Yeah. Tarkovsky, I'll always go.
Yeah.
I'll go check out. So yeah, I'm not. I don't have the ability to sit and watch 5 films anymore. So I'm kind of picking.
Have you seen Hail Satan?
Yeah, that's great.
I loved it. Man.
Really, really
saw it the other
super.
day.
Like way more affecting than it appears. You know, like it's very smart. And Under the Silver Lake, I think, is on tonight. I really want to see that, mainly because it's so polarizing. But that's the kind of, you know, I love that sort of cinema where people, they either like, I hate it, I love it, and then you want to argue about it for the rest of the night.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds like a good plan. I think I'm going to see that tonight anyway. So
good. Well, we can argue for the rest of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming by this morning and talking to me. And yeah, folks, get out there and see as many films as you can, especially Come to Daddy.
Come to Daddy, yes. Thank you, Marty.
My pleasure.
All right.